Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/Amigos podcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hi everybody, welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we are going to be talking about Super Skidmarks. But before we do, we've got a couple breaking news announcements, Amiga software and hardware event related. We've got a little bit of everything this week. We're going to start out, I came across this on the internet, and for those of you that are in the UK region, you should definitely check this out, especially if you're anywhere near London. There was one of the big magazines in the UK was Amiga Power. Are you familiar with that, Aaron?
Yes, I used to get those at a local newsstand and pay an exorbitant amount of money for the cover disc that came therein. So yes,
the Guardian has gotten a bunch of the former writers, editors, etc. from Amiga Power back. For one night only. They're going to reunite that team, and they're going to discuss all the great moments, the controversies, the unforgettable games, everything that made Amiga Power great. It's going to be just kind of like a one of those panels that they have at Comic-Con or something like that, I'm sure. So if you are in, it is Thursday, April 21st from 7 to 8:30 p.m. It's in the Scott Room, which is in London. I always laugh about British addresses because the address is the Scott Room, London, and then the postcode.
Yeah,
so I'm sure you know what that means. And the price is £10 to get in, plus £1 for a booking fee. Seems like it will be a great chance for you to go and listen to some of those names that you grew up reading.
I hope that's filmed.
Oh yeah,
Or
that would be great.
That'd be kind of neat to watch. Again, the Amiga magazines in the States here were far lamer. We had Amiga magazine, and did we have any more? I don't even know. I can't think of another American one, but I always thought Amiga Power was the top shelf mag, so I think it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I always had the cover discs and stuff are always great. I always loved that concept of that. So.
The next bit of news that I've got is, have you heard of From Bedrooms to Billions before?
Yes, I have. I have heard of that.
So this is, for those of you that don't know, this was a big Kickstarter that ran a couple years ago, all about the British gaming scene, from the point of view of the programmers. And to me, it's tremendously fascinating because it was a homegrown phenomenon. It was all these British coders writing for these British machines for the most part, and it's not something that we've seen really since then. Now everything is more international, and there's something special about having each country having kind of its own heritage within programming. Anyway, they did the first one of that series, which is called From Bedrooms to Billions, but there's a sequel coming out that is called From Bedrooms to Billions: The Amiga Years.
Oh my!
And it's all about, you guessed it, the Amiga. It's a 90-minute feature documentary film, and it's I'm just going to read directly from the site. It says it's a 90-minute feature documentary film currently in production that explores the influence of the Commodore Amiga and how it influenced a generation of developers to take video game development, music, and publishing to a whole new level and change the video game industry forever.
Nice.
So I'm definitely, I was looking at the original version From Bedrooms to Billions. You can actually rent it on the Google Play Store for $5. So
yeah, I haven't seen it, and I'm guessing you haven't.
I haven't either, so I'm gonna check that out. Maybe we can watch that together.
Yeah,
one day.
beauty.
The Amiga version is there's several different packages. These days, whenever you sell anything, you've got to sell the standard edition, the collector's edition, the deluxe,
The solid
mega,
gold, super
right?
platinum.
So this thing ranges. The cheapest version of this is just the standard digital download, which is the full 90 minutes, and it's £10. To get the extended version, which I guess is 3 hours of extra interviews and stuff like that, I think it's £15. and then it goes all the way up in the super special mega edition. You get a Blu-ray, you get the digital download, you get the collectible slipcase that it comes in, and all of that is 60 quid. So
Slipcase, huh?
yeah, for the collectible slipcase. So if you go in for that sort of thing, I used to go in for that sort of thing. I always used to want to get that stuff.
That's supporting that's also just people throwing money down to support the project.
Right.
So there's the word, I mock it, but it's something. It's a good thing.
It's not the cat helmet. Anyway, I just I saw that. If you're an Amiga fan, you might have heard of this before if you read any of the boards, but we hadn't talked about it yet on the show, and it is a big deal. I watched the promo for the first film, and it really looked slick. I mean, it looked like a real deal.
It was mostly kind of specky C64-ish that year. Who are the twins that did I think they did the Dizzy games? I know that I'm sure they were mentioned. Those guys came out of the garage and a bunch of the other garage guys. So it's neat to see that. I'm actually really interested to see the Amiga one. I mean, I'll probably learn a ton. So support this, people. It should be good.
Right. Aaron, what do you have this week for news?
Not a ton of stuff on my side, but a couple of things I want to touch on. First of all, last show I mentioned that we talked about Amiga Future, and I said they were up to issue 180. Wrong. It was 118. But as we go to press, quote unquote, here, 119 has just came out in the past couple of days. So again, looks like a pretty good read. I may actually pick this one up, have a look through it. This is quasi news. I mentioned this once before, but I'll mention it again. There are teams putting out compilation discs for the Amiga CD32. These compilations are of questionable legality. Okay. That said, they've just released one, the Ultimate Dizzy Collection. I didn't realize how many games Dizzy had out on the Amiga. It includes all the Dizzy games, including all these titles. You get Fast Food, Spellbound Dizzy, Crystal Kingdom Dizzy, Fantastic Dizzy, Fantasy World Dizzy, Magic Land Dizzy, Prince of the Yoke Folk.
That's my favorite.
Treasure Island Dizzy, which I heard was really good. Bubble Dizzy, Dizzy Panic, and Quick Snacks.
Quick Snacks?
Quick Snacks, spelled crazily.
Okay.
This news came straight off of IndieRetroNews.com, which great site.
Yeah, I think it's a great site.
Excuse me. I have not pulled any of this stuff down. I don't crack open the CD32 much since I've got the 1200 rigged up. But
it's a shame though, because that was your grail for so
long.
Well,
it was, and then right after I got it, I got a 1200, like literally the next week. Hey, compilation discs are great, So check that out if that's your bag. Again, I'm not endorsing this per se, but it's news. It's out there. Lastly, we talked it's been about a month or two ago about Karateka being ported over from the Atari ST. I finally got around to dumping this on the 1200 and trying it out. It is great. I was very impressed. This is the best Karateka has ever looked and has ever sounded. Now, I've not played the ST version, so I'm assuming you would get it's exactly the same. I don't know, but it's tremendous. The quality of the graphics is. I'm used to playing this on the 7800. I think I played on the C64. I believe the Atari computers. I think I've played it on there. This surpasses all those by a country mile. It's the most playable of the versions I've played as well. I highly recommend it. We're going to do a video review of this shortly, but if you've been on the fence, go get it. It is quite good.
I was thinking last week when we did our show, when you were on the road, we had some feedback that due to poor mixing on my part, all of your vocals were coming in through the left channel and all of mine were coming in through the right. So if you were listening to our show on headphones last week, I apologize that it sounded like you were surrounded by us bantering.
Yeah, and my bad for being out of studio. I had some emergency business I had to take care of, but hopefully that will be the one and only remote show that we ever do.
What else do you have? Do you have anything else going on with the news this week?
I'm still waiting for my bizarre Japanese diodes. They said they told me it would be between the 1st and the 12th. It is not here yet, so I'm hoping this is the week. I can't wait to put these things in, but by the time we get them in, maybe we'll already have this thing rigged.
And speaking of which, we have the board. This is that
board.
This is that RGB to VGA board that we purchased from. Let's see, where's the return address on this? This would be Guangdong, China.
Lots of W's, lots of G's and D's.
Yeah. So we are going to do some soldering and do a video of Aaron doing some soldering because he's the soldering pro.
Oh, yeah.
I sit
no
back
pressure.
And watch. And we are going to see if we can connect this thing to Aaron's cable. Now, did the cable come from China or did that come from Poland?
Gosh, I don't even remember now. It's been here so long. It's not from around here.
It wasn't locally sourced. I can tell you that.
There's not a lot of Amiga monitor cables or power cables coming out of West Virginia.
So we are going to attach the board to the cable and then attach both ends of the cable to the monitor and the 500 respectively. And hopefully, for the first time, I will have a real functioning Amiga computer in my basement. So look forward to that right after this week's show.
You know, real quick, this is just a side, but sitting and playing Karateka on the Amiga for the first time, it was great. What a great feeling to have somebody. We really are very fortunate to be here in sort of a revival period where it just feels like there's a lot more excitement in the community, and it's great. The guys that everyone that's doing these ports, these compilation discs, my hat's off to you. It's great to see people supporting the machine after all these years. And the people making this new hardware, the Vampires, the other accelerator cards, it's great. Keep up the good work. I hope everyone's supporting them financially if they can. And let's keep the ball rolling. I felt like I'm more excited now than when I had an Amiga and it wasn't dead. Because then I felt like it was dying, but now it's almost like a phoenix. I feel like we're rising back.
Right, right. Speaking of rising back, this week we are doing a racing game called Super Skidmarks, and this was a game that I had not only had I never played it, I'd never heard of it. I assumed that it was a racing game from the title, but this was suggested for us by one of our Patreon sponsors, Chris Folds, and so I'm really excited to give a review on this game because it is a wonderful racing game. Yeah,
and by the way, Chris Folds, good suggestion, and I noticed that you've been talking us up out there, and we appreciate that too.
Yeah. So this is a racing video game developed by Acid Software and released in 1995. Aaron, what can you tell us about Acid Software?
Well, from what I could, I'll be honest with you. Again, this is a game I had not crossed paths with, and Acid Software, I believe, were behind or involved with the company that made Blitz Basic, which was a kind of a gaming programming language for the Amiga. Another one I remember was Amos, same sort of thing. I am inept, and I could not use either one of these to do anything. But I read that this game was made on Blitz. I honestly don't know. Maybe it was. I could not confirm that. If it is, well done. Mm-hmm. These guys were out of New Zealand,
really,
I believe, and I looked over what they put out. They had, this was their claim to fame, really. I saw a couple games on their list though that looked interesting. There's a game called Guardian. Have you seen any of this stuff on Guardian?
No,
I've not heard of Guardian, but it looks like sort of a Star Fox clone.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't know how that would work, to be honest with you. In terms of on the Amiga, you wouldn't expect a powerful 3D engine.
No. No.
But we may have to have a look at this one, Boat. It looked pretty neat. I don't know what's happened to these guys. I didn't see anything about them shutting down. There's not a lot of information out there on it, to be completely honest with you. Mm-hmm. I know they released this game on the Amiga. They had Skidmarks, Super Skidmarks, and then they had a CD32 version and then they had they went with Codemasters and made a Genesis version. As far as I could tell, they were never released in the U.S. I couldn't find any NTSC copies of either game. So I guess the Genesis version or the Mega Drive was also in PAL. So too bad, because this is the kind of game that would probably get over in the States.
Oh man,
Wouldn't you say?
I think that this game would have done really well if they would have put out a Super Nintendo port of this. I think it would have done great. This is a classic example of how your first impression of a game might not always be the correct one, because when you load this thing up, you get a real funky, poorly designed, to be honest, menu system.
Well, I mean, it's functional. It's not attractive.
But it's not attractive, and it's if you compare it to the menu in Lotus, for example, where everything is easy to see what you're doing. For example, you have different options, and you can select your car, but when it says select car type, you think, okay, well, this is where I get to select the truck or the cow or whatever, but it's not. You actually select that type in the Grand Prix championship race mode. So, I mean, that's just one example. Everything is done in that classic DOS shell font. The graphic that is below the menus when you start is really pale, and it's almost like they used a graphic that they created on the C64 or something. It doesn't have that rich color that the rest of the game has.
It's almost like a giant icon, basically. Four colors,
right?
It could be. Here's my guess: that interface is a limitation of whatever they use to make the program, and they. Or, I don't know. It's strange. Again, I'm not a programmer, but it ain't pretty.
Yeah, and I, to be honest with you, I know a little bit about basic programming, and I think it would be very difficult to make a game that runs that smooth and that fast in BASIC. Because one of the big limitations of programming in BASIC is that you're basically doing dual interpreting, where the computer is interpreting the BASIC into machine language and then interpreting that code. And if they did do this in Blitz Basic,
well,
they deserve an award.
This is a. I mean, I'm not a programmer, but from what I've heard, Blitz Basic is especially designed to do games, and it's got speed stuff in it. I don't know.
Maybe so.
I did some basic program, but not enough to know where I could say anything else about it.
If you know one way or the other, please let us know, because I'd love to hear it. Now, once you start the game, though, this is where the game is fantastic.
It turns the corner quickly,
right?
Much like your car.
The game is a isometric, top-down racer. The closest analog is a game like Micro Machines, or really the game that I think it's most close to is RC Pro-Am.
Yeah, that's the one. That was really the one that reminded me of the most.
Yeah, if you can think about RC Pro-Am. The way that the screen scrolls with your car, and you're taking turns, and you're basically there's only two directions on your stick, left or right, and you're kind of spinning your car on its axis. That's the game. What makes this game neat is the variety of the tracks, the variety of the styles of cars, and the way that the tracks are drawn. The corners in a lot of these tracks bank up, and you think, well, how can you do that if you're drawing on a 2D plane? And the answer is, I'm not quite sure. But
shading
but your car actually reacts in some way when it goes up.
I mean, and you can tell before you get there. Okay, this is sometimes they have little hills, and you could say, okay. I mean, it's a brilliantly designed graphic. The way they implemented it's impressive.
Yeah, and so Aaron and I, of course, played 2-player split screen on this. You can also play two-player single screen, and the way that they overcome that limitation is if one player falls behind too far from the other player and they leave the screen, they will magically reappear with the player. So
that's more of your Iron Man Stewart level gameplay, and it's like we were talking earlier, it's almost like 2 games in one. I mean, really, there's a distinct difference in the way they feel to me between the the all on screen and the split.
Right. And in addition to the split screen or not split screen, there's also 2 graphics modes. There's a low res and a high res mode. And the high res mode is unique in that you see more of the track on the screen. The graphics are not as detailed because you're farther away, but you can actually link 2 Amigas together and have up to 8 players simultaneously.
Which I was reading the manual for this, and they even include a diagram in the manual to make the parallel port joystick adapter. And then you could have, if you've got 2 Amigas with 2 of those, you could effectively have 8 people. Incredible. I mean, it's got it's got you can link them up. You got your modem link up. You've got 8 people playing. I believe the high res modes are only available on the AGA machines, and I believe the 8-person link up is only available on the AGA. I think. I'm sure the high res, but still. Just the fact that this thing could push out a split screen is impressive. And this thing is silky smooth and fast. Fast almost.
It suffers from absolutely no slowdown.
No.
Very little flickering. It's an amazing accomplishment.
It really is. It's from a technical standpoint, I'm often amazed. Me and Bo talked about the fact that it's amazing that the Amiga could push this stuff out. It really is. You're talking about something that came out in '85 and it's pushing out stuff like that. That's Nintendo level. I mean, this would not be embarrassed to be on the NES, for example. You could accept it quite easily. I mean, it's very similar to something that's already there.
Yeah.
And even those don't have this, the various graphical modes that this have or the linking. I mean, it's an impressive feat.
Yeah. So you start out in kind of the if you just select match race by default, you're racing around a track in Mini Coopers, but after that, you can select the kind of the Grand Prix mode, and you can choose what kind of vehicle you'd like, and each vehicle reacts differently. There are Porsches; they look like Porsche 914s. There are Beetles. The Beetles are very fast and difficult to control.
I mean, they're like warp speed, these things.
There are cows, oddly. Giant cows on wheels.
I guess they just pounded wheels and axles into their hooves.
Yeah. There are monster trucks, and the monster truck courses feature these big these big ramps that you fly off into the air. Really cool. And so you get a lot of replay, not only out of the variety of tracks in the game, but also the variety of vehicles.
And I believe you could even make your own vehicles. I was reading the manual, and they were talking about how you would make your own vehicles. And it's funny, the manual for this had a couple of things in it that amused me. And one of the things it mentioned that if you could make vehicles better than the ones that came with the game, to get hold of Acid Software for possible employment or at least some money, and which I thought was funny. And then they also, something I thought was interesting, they spoke of they were going to publish, or maybe they did publish, a magazine for the game, and the magazine was going to occasionally release extra tracks.
Well, if you look at the disc versions of this game, there are 7 different track discs. Tracks.
Maybe they just compiled them and
right.
Yeah.
And so
I wonder if those were released via that magazine.
I don't know.
It'd be interesting. I mean, if anyone out there ever had this magazine, if it ever even happened, but it's mentioned in the manual, and I was like, that's how wacky. How many games about their own magazine? Not too many.
No.
And I don't know how long this magazine lasted, but it's kind of neat, though.
Yeah. One other kind of interesting thing about this game is that it features a Pong minigame on the main menu. So
inexplicably.
Yeah, and it's just there. If you want to play Pong while you're deciding what you want to do, in the game, it's there. I'm always amused by any games that include mini games, and of course you might have heard, Aaron, that Konami, I think, has finally, the patent or whatever they had on having mini games during loading screens has finally expired. And so
Yeah,
for years and years and years, there were certain games that had little mini games and loading screens, but it was all this one publisher. And now, loading times are still with us, unfortunately, and so maybe those will make a return.
It's funny because I remember playing it when my friend got a PlayStation, and we were waiting. I believe we were waiting for Ridge Racer to come up, and as I recall, there was a Galaxian clone in there. And that's a Namco title.
Well, actually, maybe it is Namco. You're probably right. It probably is Namco that had that copyright.
It's strange that someone would hold that and not let. It's amazing. Obviously, these guys didn't care,
right?
But of course this certainly predates that. I don't know when they would have done it. I don't know when they initially put that in. That's odd.
Yeah. But anyway, Pong is there. Should you wish to play it, this game reviewed very well in magazines. The reviewers went nuts over the fact that you could link to Amiga 1200s and play 8 players. They reviewed the other version slightly lower because of the lack of the high res mode, but this game was really universally beloved in all the territories that it was released in. I don't know why why, just like we said, Acid didn't make an attempt to bring this to the U.S. other than it was released in 1995. By then, maybe they just looked at Amiga sales in the U.S. or whatever, and they might have just decided it wasn't worth it, financially.
Yeah, you're probably right. I know this was a big seller in the U.K. and presumably in Europe. There may have been very few distribution angles left to get stuff to the States. In '95. The Amiga, I was on a distant memory for. I don't remember ever seeing. You very, very rarely saw them in the stores there anyway. I knew one place, maybe two in the state, where you could get Amiga software, and they were both had given up on the Amiga well before '95. So that makes we missed out. Hopefully someday they'll get someone will find a fix to let you play this on an NTSC Amiga because I'd like to play it on the actual hardware. But what can you do?
Aaron, do you have anything else on Super Skidmarks?
Yes, I did my usual shtick and looked this bad boy up on eBay. There are, believe it or not, there were a few American sellers. They were selling the PAL version. This was going for right around $21.
Okay.
Plenty of these available. Plenty available in the UK. Plenty of the original Skidmarks, which Super Skidmarks effectively is among additional features is a bug patch for the first one. So if you're going to get Skidmarks, know what you're getting into. It had some problems. I think it had some loading problems and some other stuff. So I'd probably steer clear of that. You're not losing anything by just going for the Super.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Super Skidmarks ranks pretty high on a lot of the different all-time lists that people have put out. I think Amiga Power, they ranked it 24th as the 24th best game of all time in their list.
Yeah, it's real good. Like I said, it's not what I would call. It's not the newest concept. It's not the most original concept. But they took something and made it better in a lot of ways. And my hat's off to a great game. Yeah. Now we need to add some combat to it, which I think I saw. There's something out there like Super Skidmarks, but with auto combat. So we'll have to look into that.
Oh yeah. Well, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week. Well, really not just for this week, for always.
Every week.
Every week. Chris Folds, and thanks again, Chris, for the game recommendation.
Yep, good call.
Zach Zimmerman, Adam Bradley, Will Williams, Daniel Bingston, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Brent Dowdy, and Chad Halstead.
It gets bigger every week. I love it. Thanks, guys.
And next week, we have a new... kind of a new special thing. We're going to have a special guest on. Jeff from Vintage Volts is going to join us. And, Aaron and I don't really delve into the productivity or utility side of the Amiga much because neither one of us really used it for that application.
It's the anti-productivity for me.
Right.
I'm trying to get stuff done. Oh, there's the Amiga.
And so, but we realize that there might be some people out there that have fond memories of those programs or might want to learn more about them. So Jeff is going to talk about Turbo Silver and Imagine. And they are some of the earliest Amiga 3D design programs.
Yes, Imagine. I was familiar with that from a layman's perspective, and it was supposed to be quite powerful.
Yeah, so he's going to be on to talk about that. And our game next week is going to be, we're going to cover the entire Body Blows series.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
So we've never done a fighting game on Amigos before. And so we figured we'd start with an Amiga exclusive. Well, Aaron, I guess that wraps up this week's show. Until next time,
Adios.